Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going okay.
Morning.
Okay, we'll just give it a couple minute grace period, let's say.
Sounds good.
I'm going to have to bounce at the half hour, so this agenda looks like it's small and sort of front loaded with the things I care most about. Not that I don't care about the rest, but picking and choosing.
Yeah, I think it's a very manageable agenda today.
How are you holding up, Mr. Maury?
I'm doing okay, man. How about you?
About the same. Can't complain too much. We're all alive and relatively healthy.
That's a good thing. Let's see.
Hi, everyone. I'm new to this group.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey.
Alrighty, so Valerie is on the agenda with Chojin, and she just let me know that she'll be late. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Jeremy, I think you're on the agenda first with supercluster name.
Yeah. So I shared out in the forum a sheet that a whole bunch of people have joined in on with suggestions. And quite frankly, I'll share it now, but I'm really not sure the best way to proceed. We got a lot of suggestions. And so kind of
you're empowered to share your screen if you want to share that doc and we can look at it.
Perfect. Sharing now. All right. Everybody see that?
Yes, but maybe you can make it a little bigger.
Yes. Cool. Yeah, so a lot of suggestions here. I think we have 76 suggestions, it looks like, for
Awesome.
for cluster names. And you know, if anyone wants to open this up, it's on the mailing list. It might be, and it's on the agenda. Might be easier to see locally. I guess, how should we proceed to kind of whittle this down?
So
go ahead, Tim.
So I participated in a sort of naming exercise fairly recently, and I thought it was interesting that you can actually approach this with some amount of rigor. I think what we should do is define what we think the top criteria are, and sort of, like, there's probably some obvious ones that we can just discard because they're silly or they overlap with things that exist already, or they're just too unrelated. But this is a good brainstorm. I mean, the fact that there was very little filtering at the front, right? Then
I like the idea of identifying goals for names. That might be something else that we can like open in the mailing list. But I also wouldn't mind talking about it now for a few minutes.
Yeah, so like let's throw out what we think are the best criteria for these things, and then we can sort of weed out some obvious ones that just don't meet the criteria, and I think we can very quickly reduce this list of 70 something to 20 something, right? Right. And then it's much more manageable to talk about the merits.
Yeah, so I mean, just off the top of my head, the ones that I've been thinking about are descriptive, so you know, not just a random word.
Hold on. Is somebody taking notes, like writing this down? Sorry.
Let's see. We can, let me open up the Meeting notes. All right. I'm not an amazingly reliable scribe, but I'm
getting
doing
there
my
too.
best. And I'm on my phone, but Jeremy, if you want to share the notes on the screen, like that way people can intervene in my most hideous note-taking errors as they happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring it up.
So I'll elect the criteria to be shorter is better.
Yeah, agree. I think for me, I don't want to reuse a term that has any overlap with prior work in the area, and I would also prefer to avoid using a term that's used to describe a feature in some specific piece of software or commonly used.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well,
I understand the overlap. I don't.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to use it. So federation fits actually both those things. It's both an overlap with previous work, and it's also something that is like widely used in a generic sense, but it has so many different meanings that it's like frequently feels to me like it's counterproductive to even say the word.
Right.
Like
Okay.
federated Prometheus, federated, you name it, like
Got
all
it.
means different stuff.
Right. Or another one I saw on that list was set, which is
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got 4 criteria. Is there anything else anybody thinks like really matters in their brain when we're talking about these lists? Let me scan through the list.
It would probably be nice if, and I think, like I opened up that the multi-cluster zone could be different, but it probably makes sense that they're not.
Yeah, I'd say let's choose the term first.
Yeah.
And derive the name of the zone domain from that.
Yeah, well, actually, we have a separate concern, which is, should we use local? Local is actually wrong in pretty much every sense, but we don't need to conflate that with choosing the domain. So let's first pick the term in the domain, and then we can argue about whether it's .local or .xx or .lan or something more appropriate.
Right.
Or
yeah, that makes sense.
default.term.
Term?
Like expansion of whatever the term is. Default.blah.
So without trying not to completely derail, there are a bunch of reserved TLDs that we can use, and including a whole bunch of 2-letter like reserved country codes, which may be the best option, but that's actually sort of a bigger discussion because I'd like to include the rest of SIG network if we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like if there's a v2 DNS for Kubernetes overall, it would probably go in the same direction. So we can make that a separate conversation.
Right.
So I think .xx or .qq sounds pretty fun. Unfortunately, KK is actually assigned. Okay, so we've got some criteria. Anyone else want to offer anything else?
I'm listening to see if anybody says it's got to be a new name with a K in it.
I'm tempted to offer not nautical, but that cuts out a whole lot of decent options. All right, well, we've got some criteria then. You know, we can run through the list now and like filter out ones that are obviously not going to fly. And then maybe we can, I don't know, encourage people to add columns or comment on their scoring or something like that.
Yep. Okay.
You want to run through them and just read them off, and then we can spend 20 seconds on each one?
Yeah, so supercluster, which has been the placeholder, and actually it looks like it got a couple upvotes. I mean,
It's not horrible. I think that should stay in the running.
Yep. Mesh seems to kind of go against the no overlap and not overly generic.
Yep.
I think my inclination would be to leave that one in the running, but I think it's going to score poorly. It's not obviously wrong, is I guess what I'm saying.
I don't think it's wrong so much as it's already in use in many areas, but we don't need to deep six it yet.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a little confusing in the sense that, like, are you talking about like a service mesh that you've installed, or are you talking about the mesh?
I agree. I propose.
Should we deep six it?
Okay,
Yep.
there we go. This is perfect. Meta cluster.
It's a cluster of clusters.
Yep. Seems to, I think that stays in the running.
Okay.
Cluster group.
It's not horrible.
No, it works.
Cluster group is that you may ultimately want to think about collecting a set of clusters together. And so if cluster group, ultimately it becomes a way to deal with like access control. Like I want to group together clusters 1 through 5. Do I want to think about that as sort of one subdomain or kind of a broader subdomain? Like I think there's other things where cluster group might come up in this space.
Yeah, I think the name we're trying to pick is the widest scoped collection of clusters that you might deal with at once. Does everybody agree, or what name are we actually picking?
I think that's right. Yeah. And so with cluster group, maybe this is another criteria, but well, I guess this fits not overly generic. Like maybe cluster group, that's just how I would describe, like that's just plain English for multiple clusters. I don't know that, yeah, I could see that coming up in other areas and being confusing.
Yeah, I think it's not obviously wrong though. And
yeah,
the reason is like, it is sort of a natural term that a lot of people come to. I think it'll score poorly on the overly generic dimension, but I would suggest we don't nix it yet.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
Bevy.
I have a meta question.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that clusters can belong to more than one group or whatever this will be?
For this, I think it's a set of clusters that can only belong to one group. It's a mutually exclusive.
Okay, because that could also affect the choice of names. Some names might imply that kind of many-to-many association.
True. No, that's good to think about as well.
Okay.
Thoughts on Bevy?
It's kind of silly.
It's brief.
It's the only thing it's got going for it.
Yeah.
That was one of mine, so I'm happy to nix it.
Okay.
Is Throng a T-Hawken original?
It is.
I knew it.
All right. Fleet seems overly generic.
It's also the name of another thing sort of in the space.
It's actually the name of two things in this space.
Right. All right, we should not add one to that. Cool. Sector. To me, nothing obviously wrong. I'm not sure it exactly fits.
I think it can stay in, but it's not a slam dunk. Like, the back glass isn't shattering or anything.
Okay.
All right, locus.
I don't think it carries the right connotation.
Yeah.
Also, I can't see it and not think locutus, so.
Okay, so. All right, nix it. Set would be out. K-set,
Getting colder.
Yeah. Crew.
Isn't that the name of another thing already?
Is it? I don't know.
Isn't it?
I think it
I
is.
thought there was a Google project called Crew that was in Kubernetes space.
It's probably true.
Yeah. I think regardless, the fact that that comes to mind says it's probably not the best idea. Congregation. Kind of fits.
It's a little longish, but it's.
It is. But yeah, maybe leave it in.
I like clump.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not against clump. Category seems too vague.
Yeah.
And same with catalog. Catalog kind of describes
Yeah.
the registry more than the concept. Neighborhood.
Can we work a K into it, like a silent leading K?
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood. All right, maybe leave it. Family seems a little vague, but it kind of fits.
Well,
I'm afraid
family
family
would
is-
imply a one-to-one relationship. That's what I wanted to point out.
Right.
You won't belong to two different families.
Right. So it is pretty descriptive from that sense. I don't.
We can leave it, like, this is just
Yeah.
first pass, right?
Yeah.
I think clan, for obvious reasons, is just not going to fly.
Yep.
Yeah, deep
And
six.
nobody even suggests the alternate spelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Clutch. I mean, it's short. I leave it first pass.
Okay.
Coordination, that just doesn't really seem to line up.
There's also the coordination API.
Yeah.
Plane, as in plane of existence.
How about dimensional
got-
plane? Just combining 27 and 28.
But you got projects
Because we
like
have-
Crossplane that are out today, right?
Yeah.
So some overlap.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Oops. Dimension, reality. I like where this is going.
Hmm.
I think dimension doesn't offer anything of significant
Yeah.
merit. Reality neither. Somebody watched
Yeah.
Dr. Strange or something.
Galaxy kind of fits, but like, I mean, cluster.
It seems like a bit of a aggrandized name, and I'm like hesitant to use very impressive sounding terms at this point.
Well, also, space nerding here, it's the wrong way.
It's inverted.
Galaxy's smaller
Yeah.
than a cluster, so.
Mhm.
Aren't there star clusters too?
Yeah. I guess I'm stuck on the cluster, supercluster. That's, where that came from. So
Mhm.
I don't know, thoughts here.
I don't hate Galaxy. I'd suggest we leave it for now
All right.
and score it. Combo.
Yeah, I don't know about combo or aspect.
I agree on aspect.
Do we have a particular sentence in mind that we're dropping this into? Like, is it a Kubernetes blank that we're talking about?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Actually, that was part of the naming exercise that I did, was what they called canonical sentences. And you come up with a few phrases and where you would use the word and you try to drop it in and you see how it feels.
That's a
So,
good.
like,
What's our
I-
canonical sentence?
well, since our most immediate target is services, something about services, like something
I
across
export
my,
this service to my blank.
to the
I
rest
guess
of my.
that's, yeah.
Sure. So I export this service to the rest of my galaxy. I export this service to the rest of my aspect.
I schedule work on the rest of my blah.
My X
Submit a
cluster.
job to your galaxy. So I think X cluster holds no appeal.
Yeah, and I think Zluster, I don't even know how you say that.
Getting
Cluster.
colder.
Yeah.
Cluster. Zluster? Coop? Co-op?
Co-op.
Ooh, that's funny because it could be coop like a chicken coop or co-op like a cooperation or cooperative.
It seems very similar to cops.
Yeah.
I have to add the hyphen. Co-op.
Kubernetes
Yeah.
is, while I appreciate for strictly humor-related reasons, is probably not a great idea.
Yeah.
Kubernetes?
Kubernetes is.
That would be technically Kubernetes.
Yeah, Kubernetes. I'm glad it's here, but I don't think so. Kubernetes, yeah.
Kubernetes is?
Cubes.
I think Kubernetes is only applies if you speak it in Gollum voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad it's here, though. Thank you, whoever put that in. Cubes.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that.
Yeah.
We get into the animal terms now. A pack,
Yeah.
a herd, a
Pack.
hydra.
Pack of clusters seems to
It's
make
not bad.
sense.
In that neighborhood, you could think about like gaggle or any other animal grouping.
Right.
I mean, I'm fine with Gaggle, but I imagine that the proximity to Google would probably be off-putting.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think herd and herd need to be nixed because of herd.
Yeah.
Hydra. I submitted a job to run in my Hydra. I don't think of Hydra as a good thing.
Yeah.
Hail Hydra.
Sticks.
Sticks.
Taking
Is
it
sticks
further.
a group of some animal? That's one I've never heard before.
Or is this
Yeah.
just
Me
continuing?
neither.
Or is this just continuing like the river Styx?
Or, yeah, the
Hydra
Greek
and-
answer.
Yeah.
So no one outside of the hairband from the 80s. No.
I definitely
Of course
thought
I
of
did.
Styx, yeah.
And I thought of Cartman singing it, so.
Yeah. Pantheon, I don't know.
I think it's the
Very
right
impressive
side of,
sounding.
it's the right side of cute, but I'm afraid that it's a little overly grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Glob. I like glob, actually.
I like glob. Yeah.
For me, it's between glob and clump
All right.
so far.
Yeah. Those, I mean, it's short, it works. Yeah, group's too generic, I think.
Cluster set.
I mean,
Multiverse, multi-cluster, probably just too generic.
And
yeah.
I like cluster set.
Yeah,
I kinda
cluster
like
set
cluster
has
set.
the appeal of being very descriptive. What is it? Well, it's a set of clusters, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to explain someone why it's a Q2 term.
Okay,
Right.
we don't need a strong reason to keep it in. We keep it in.
Yeah.
Multiverse.
What does that even mean?
I guess extending the Kubernetes resource universe.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah,
not a
but-
term that really took root.
Right. So then
Yeah.
it doesn't. Yeah, multi-cluster seems too generic.
So all the
Really,
names that
I
have
actually don't.
all the names that have the word cluster in them imply that this is a cluster.
Right. It's
And
not.
Well,
yeah.
a multi-cluster is. I mean, it scores highly on the descriptive dimension.
Yeah.
I'm used to thinking of multi-cluster as an adjective. But yeah, I think like a multi-cluster, mega cluster, macro cluster make me think of like associations that I have with like this group of stuff is really just a big blah, and that's not an idea that I think we want to plant in people's heads.
So I think mega cluster failed. And so I'm going to nix it. I think it was actually mine. Macro cluster doesn't roll off the tongue, but to me, it would be an acceptable, I think. Multi-cluster, I actually kind of like, but macro cluster, I'd be fine to nix.
Yeah, I mean, so
Let's
yeah, I
deep
think
six
macro
it.
cluster we can skip. The main issue I have with multi-cluster is like if we look at this SIG, it might start to imply that we only care about like everything that we ever talk about is only about this one, like it's only about the now multi-cluster, which we've turned into a specific concept. And maybe
that's true. All right, we'll score that when we get there then.
Yeah.
How about quadrant, delta quadrant?
There are 15 quadrants and only 8 Jan Michaels. A Jan Michael cannot be in more than one quadrant at the same time.
Goodbye.
That's what I think of.
More animal terms, shoal, hive, pack. Any of these resonate?
Shoal is a nautical term.
Isn't a shoal a group of animals?
A shoal is like an interstitial rocky zone
Oh,
that's
had something wrong in my
difficult to
head.
navigate.
It's also a large number of fish swimming together.
That's what I thought.
I don't know. I think shoal might be appropriate because it's difficult and tends to sink your boat.
All right, it's staying.
It does have that
Yeah.
going for it, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Hive
I
is the
propose
name.
maybe we need a criteria for not a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hive is the name of a thing in OpenShift, so I must ask for that one to be struck.
Okay.
Pack,
Didn't we already have pack up further?
did we?
38.
Yeah, we did. So we don't need it twice. Armada.
It's an IBM term. They use it for their Kubernetes offering internally, I think.
Okay, so that's probably not great.
I don't know, but I don't think it's a public thing now. I could check.
I kind of object to it on the military connotation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Association.
did not put in here flotilla, which I would strongly object to on the silliness dimension.
Association too vague.
Too vague.
Metro.
Let's also be careful to let's time box this to the next couple minutes.
Yep.
All right, we're almost done here.
It just goes to show you that naming is a strange attractor for people's attention.
Metro carries no value. Kin, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
Cluster kin.
Cluster kin.
Union, too generic.
Yep. Muster.
Muster I kind of like. It's a little close to master, but.
Yeah, we can leave it. Multi, that's too generic, I think. Constellation.
Sorry, you missed the cluster.global, which, leaving it as cluster but changing the suffix.
That seems harder to talk about. Also, it requires the suffix to be acceptable, right? Constellation doesn't seem bad.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a little longish, but I think it can stay.
Flock. Seems
I
fine.
think composite cluster is a little bit of a mouthful. Aggregation is the name of another feature.
Yep.
Collective, I don't know.
Yeah.
Assembly's pretty generic. Faction, I dislike the connotation.
Yep. Me too. Class is too vague.
Yeah.
Cohort kind of fits.
Yeah, it kind of fits.
think we can
Partition's very
yeah.
overloaded. Collection,
Yeah.
really generic.
Yep. And
Commingle is
commingle.
out there.
Yeah.
So do we want to
Okay.
or from a lazy consensus standpoint, do we want to give people more chance to submit names, or do we want to try to like pick amongst these names?
I think this represents our best effort.
Okay.
Like, I'm not sure we're going to find something better than that's what's in here. And there's actually some good ones in here.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, as a next step, maybe Jeremy, do you want to move all of the removed ones down to the bottom? I'm not sure if you can sort by that. And then we can add a column and sort and whatever. And then take it to the mailing list with the criteria and ask people to sort of pick their like top 5 and score them on those 4 dimensions.
Should we do? Should we just do it on the mailing list like that, or should we do like a poll?
If you want to set up something more rigorous than a mailing list, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You have more free time than I do.
Yeah, I don't know if
Sorry.
I actually do. So maybe I'll just ask people to vote on the mailing list, and we can see where it goes.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. We can take the.
Wait. I could actually throw up a poll where I let people score each option, say from 1 to 5.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah.
On each criteria, or on like as a single dimension.
There's a single dimension. What would we make? What multiple criteria would there be?
I think like looking at the criteria that we called out in the beginning: descriptive, shorter is better, no overlap with related prior work, and not overly generic. And actually, I was just going to add the not negative connotation. So we've got 5 dimensions. I think some names will score high in one and low in another.
I think asking people to rate each of 20 different names in 5 dimensions is not going to happen.
Let's just take the rest of this offline. We've got something else on the agenda that we need to give time to.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. And I need to bounce out, so sorry. Yeah, let's take it to the mailing list, but good filtering. Thanks, guys.
All right. Chojin and Valerie, you're up next with Work API.
Hey, hello.
Right.
Hey, I can hear you both.
Okay, Shojin might be better in a position to give the update since he's worked on a lot of the API stuff.
Yeah, so we were talking about maybe talking through the changes that are in that PR to track applied resources.
Yeah, so I think I may want to just first to demonstrate the APIs that we've put in the various repo, and then we could to see the PRs or to track resources.
Okay, go for it.
Is it possible that you can see my screen?
I cannot currently see your screen. Screen sharing is enabled.
Let me. Yeah, okay. Hey, how about now?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. So I think the background is that we want to have a work API that can define a group of the manifests, and those manifest resources will be deployed on the Spoke clusters with certain controller loops. So this is basically the APIs that we are currently working on the Valoris repo. So there will be two parts, like in the spec, in the work spec, we define workload field, and in the workload field, we define a set of the manifest, which is basically the runtime raw extensions as each items as the manifest. So this is very simple part that in the spec, you just define a set of the manifest to deploy it on the Spoke cluster. And on the other part is about the work status. So we currently have two conditions. One is the conditions for this work API, and another conditions is a list conditions that for each manifest that is being deployed. So the manifest conditions will currently have two parts. One is an identifier that is to identify which resources by using the GVR and the namespace and name to identify what conditions for a certain resource. And then we will have a list of the conditions to say what's the current conditions for this certain resources on the Spoke cluster. So currently we think that there might be several conditions that is valid to say about the work, such as applied. It means that we have successfully applied the things on the Spoke cluster. Something like we can say a progressing states is like we are transition from one state to another state. Available state means this kind of the manifest resources is being created and already be running on the Spoke cluster. And maybe we will have a degraded status. That means, like, for example, if we have a deployment deployed on the Spoke cluster, we were able to check whether the replica, the desired replica matches the current replicas. And if it is not, it seems to be like in a degraded status. So yeah, I think that's the basic of the APIs. And I mean, are there any comments or questions for this part?
I'm just noticing on conditions, I wonder if it makes more sense to make that more of like a status, like not individual conditions, but like a status enum or something, because it seems like those are all mutually exclusive states, or at least, you know, progressing, available, degraded are applied. I guess it could fit.
Yeah, I think I'm wary of hooking into the great conditions debate here.
Yeah.
But is it sufficient to just say noted in about whether we think these are the exact right conditions to have?
I think it would be sufficient for the foreseeable future, at least.
Yeah. I think the flow definitely makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, maybe we can keep going.
Yeah, and yeah, that's basically the part of the API. So I think another PR that we're still working on is about the control loops to apply the resources on the spoke cluster. So let me just go to the control part. Oh, okay. So I think currently we just use a controller, the Kubuilder to build this controller. So we'll be like have a reconcile loop, and so this is just for the deletion of the work, such as when we delete the work on then we should ensure that the resources, the manifest in the work should also be deleted in the spoke cluster. And then there is another part, like when we have, give me 1 minute. So then we have a way to apply the resources on the spoke cluster. So we just retrieve all the manifests in the work API, and then unmarshal it as unstructured, and calling something like a dynamic client to create or update that resources on the spoke cluster. And after that, we will be able to get the results. Give me 1 minute. So we will be able to get the result of the reconcile, the result of the resource apply. For example, when we apply the resources, we will have a list of the result that each item shows whether the manifest has been successfully applied on the spoke cluster, and then we were able to use that result to generate the conditions for a certain manifest. So in the result, we just put something like the GVRs, the namespace name, and then we can know that this is certain status conditions for certain manifest. And then we, based on the apply result, whether it is failed or successful, then we can generate the certain conditions on the conditions part in the manifest condition. So after that, we will just merge this one to so this is just to generate the desired conditions in this reconcile loop. And then we will use the current conditions, manifest conditions in the work API to merge with this one and generate a new manifest conditions and update the APIs. So yeah, that's the basic things that we are currently doing. I think the things that are missing is that we still not to merge the current one with the desired one and update back to the API. So that's some things you need to do in SPR. Valerie, do you have anything that want to comment?
I don't have anything too major. The main thing that I've been trying to think about is how to essentially deal with reconcile conflicts, because we have a lot of fields that might be mutable as part of like internal automation, like say HPA editing replicas, or like someone's custom or custom cluster automation. I've noticed like in a lot of the GitOps type stuff, the way it works is basically it's an upfront apply once on source change. And then after that, it doesn't continue to reconcile. I'm wondering if we might want something like that where we initially set up resources in the cluster if they are not there, and then do an apply whenever we change the source, and either with configurable behavior as default, just don't try to keep updating things after that, because I think we'll wind up kind of having too many apply slap fights with other things.
Yeah, I think that's a good instinct, and probably is durable at least for a couple beats of exploratory work. I also don't think we want like thrashing happening between work API and like admission mutation stuff in the cluster, or HPA, or some other controller manipulating fields on things. So triggering updates based on updates to the source makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And then maybe down the line, you want to think about some way to specify fields that are create only, I guess would be the way to talk about them. Like things that you don't care to update if they change, but I don't think that's necessary to start.
Yeah, my current goal so far is to make a specific subset of resources work first, and then start thinking about bigger picture. That's definitely a concern, is trying to figure out how to properly map intent here. And there's probably some things that I can learn from the whole server-side apply change with that.
I think starting small makes sense though.
That's I think all the update that I have right now.
Okay. Well, we are at time for now. So, folks, if you have things you want to put onto the agenda, the document should be world writable, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks for the updates on work stuff and good naming discussion.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, see ya.